So I'm going to call the Hermiston City Council City Manager's Work Session meeting to order. This evening we have a couple presentations for the council. During the work sessions, it's an opportunity for the City Council to learn a little bit more, a little bit deeper dive on some specific subjects. And tonight we're going to discuss an update on Hermiston Energy Services as well as a sanitary disposal update. This is an opportunity for the council to, like I said, study these things deeper, so we do it over a lunch or a dinner time. So some of the councilors, we are being video recorded. Make sure you remember to speak into your microphone so they can hear you online. But they're also eating their dinner at the same time. So we're trying to do a working meal here. Ms. Smith, do you have any comments?
just a quick brief introduction. These were a couple of topics that we wanted to give the council an update on. If there's some interest in some more detailed stuff, I think particularly on the sanitary disposal presentation, we'd be happy to bring it back for some more detail. But I think we just wanted to get these two topics and give you an update where we're at. And so we'll start with the HES and Mr. Rivera.
Welcome, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council staff. I asked Mark to go first because even though my presentations are designed to be interactive, I figure if I went first, you'd be eating during most of it, so could possibly limit some of the discussion. Okay, so as a reminder, I just kind of always like to give a background update. We do have some new counselors. Just a reminder, Hermiston Energy Services is in their 20th year of operation. October 1st, 2001 was when Hermiston Energy Services became an electric utility in the state of Oregon. It's the newest electric utility in the state by about 50 years. So we currently serve about 5,400 customer owners with annual sales of about 108 million kilowatt hours. To give you some perspective of that, we're about 7% of the energy sales side of Umatilla Electric. And we're about a third of the size of customer members. And so we serve approximately half small to medium commercial and the other half is residential. Our facilities are 36 miles of overhead, 20 miles of underground, and we serve approximately 63% of the land mass of the city of Hermiston. So based on where you live within the city of Hermiston, you can have up to 3 different providers. So tonight, I want to circle back with the staff talking about the rate adjustment update. A year ago, council took action in a phased approach, and tonight I just wanted to give you an update of where we're at on that, what the progress over the last 10 months has been, and be able to answer any questions on that. And that's a U date instead of an update. Yeah, I saw you, Councilor Bremer. Nice job. Thank you for the catch. So our rate model goals, as always, are to collect the appropriate amount of revenue. We want to make sure that whenever we set rates, they're stable and predictable. We want to give good indications of what the rates are going to be doing, what pressures are coming our way, so that our customer base can understand and appropriately plan for their expenses. We try to set our rates as equitable amongst customer classes. We don't cross-subsidize between any of our customer classes. Residential pays for residential, irrigation pays for irrigation, same with small and medium commercial. And then a real primary goal is rates are easy to understand. We want to make sure that we clearly communicate to our customers about how they can make rate changes and how their usage impacts their rates. So to achieve this, we work with an independent third party to perform a cost of service analysis. So I work directly with them, sharing all of our financial information, all of our usage, historical usage, and with that group, they come up with a recommendation of a cost of service analysis for these individual rate classes, and that was presented to you guys last year. So, like we talked about last November, we knew and shared that the existing rate structure did not collect the appropriate amount of revenue. We knew that we have actually been using our reserves and changing the way we spend, deferring some maintenance and some capital projects because of rate pressures. In the last 3 fiscal years, we've used $2.4 million from some bond restructuring savings that we did in 2016, as well as reserves. We've reduced spending. Like I said, we deferred a lot of our maintenance and construction work plans. So this took us into 2018, where we had a $1.2 million deficit in our rates. We continue to use reserves, moved our construction work plan and maintenance into our bond restructuring plan, took it out of Department 13, which is energy. And in 18, we approved a 1.7% adjustment. So after we moved some of our higher pressure costs into other areas, we still had a rate increase just to break even that year. That took us to 2020, 2021. When we spoke last year at this time, we communicated that we had a little over $1 million deficiency in our rates. And that was primarily, the key drivers on that was a $500,000 Bonneville Power Administration rate increase in October of 19, and then moving those system maintenance capital project costs back into Department 33 after we had exhausted all of our bond refinance funds. So with that, last November, you guys took action to adjust rates, and you guys chose to do a two-phase rate adjustment. The first phase was a 6.9% adjustment. Overall, individual rate classes varied. That went into effect January. Residential customers averaged about $117 a month during this rate adjustment. That's what they were up until October 1st of 2021. And October 1st, the phase 2 of the overall rate adjustment went into effect, and that was a 6.9 adjustment. So now our residential customers are paying on average about $124 a month. So between last month and this month now, there's an additional increase of about 22 cents per day. So to give you an idea what our rate structure looks like, when we talked about simplicity, you know, we really have our rates broke down into 4 categories, and those 4 categories are primarily based on usage, and so the amount of usage. So we have our residential customers, small, large commercial, and then our irrigation. And so this is what phase 1 and phase 2 look like. Residential does not have a demand charge. We capture that demand in their energy charge for simplicity of billing and customer understanding, and then looking at the percent change. And so even though we have a 6.9% adjustment, each individual rate class will vary. So looking at the phase 2 on the very far right, that's the percentage increase that each customer class will see for a 6.9% adjustment. And I can call out the small and irrigation customer charges between phase 1 and phase 2. So single phase service for small commercial and irrigation did not have a change in customer charge, only the 3-phase service in the customer charge on small commercial and irrigation. That's why it's highlighted. So to give you an idea how we compare as an electric utility to other local electric providers, Milton Free Water is a municipal electric utility. They're typically one of the lowest in the state, if not the lowest, and we've had several conversations with them, and it really comes down to debt financing. HES carries debt, and Milton Free Water does not. Other than that, the operations are very similar. The costs are pretty similar. We have about 800 more meters than they do. But that's really that difference of that $9 is about $9 to $10 a month. It makes up debt financing that we have for the utility. Umatilla Electric, volume certainly helps them out. So within the city of Hermiston, you're pretty close, but also in the city of Hermiston, Pacific Power serves power. So when you look at Umatilla Electric, HES, and Pacific Power, we're still very competitive in our rates. And this is after phase 2 on October 1st has been implemented. So this is what our customers are seeing today. So to update you a little bit on this process, like I said earlier, we had that $1 million rate deficiency if we didn't take any action. So if you didn't take action, that's what we would have saw in our last fiscal year. So since you passed phase 1, which went into effect in January, It allowed us to reduce the amount of reserves that we were using to cover the shortfalls in our budget. We still were spending about $45,000 a month out of reserves to cover the budget shortfall until we got into phase two. And this allowed us to actually end our fiscal year with $822,000 in deficiency, in rate deficiency. So we knew this was going to be the case, but that phase one rate increase took it from over $1 million to a little over $800,000. And the first half of that, about $500,000, we couldn't do anything about because the rate change didn't go into effect until January. So as of September 1st, based on the information I shared with you last year, based on tracking the COSA, the projections that we made were within 1% of what we talked about, and we're 0.6% ahead of projections. And so all the information that you guys made the decision on and the recommendations we made are tracking pretty true. The only anomaly we saw was that 10 days at the end of June where it was 100 plus degrees. That is that 0.6% of our revenue was just in that spell. Other than that, we would have almost been right on or just a little bit under. So it's never a positive thing to talk about rate impacts and rate changes, but as far as the financial information, what we projected and the decisions you guys made, it's tracking to what we anticipated. So what does phase two do? So we got through phase one knowing that we are still using reserves every day. Phase two actually gets us at the break-even point, just break even for the utility by mid-October. So what this means is in November, we'll no longer be using reserves to cover our rate deficiencies. We can actually cover the cost of the utility based on the revenue from the ratepayers. And that's obviously the best sound financial policy for a utility. And this includes the full system maintenance cost recovery. But it's important to know this does not include several factors. This just gets us to break even. This does not include any capital improvement projects. As a reminder, since about 2019, we've deferred maintenance and capital projects. So we know we have some needs in the utility, and those needs are still there. It doesn't include any state, federal mandate changes, anything with energy assistance, debt forgiveness, conservation, EE mandates that we see. It doesn't include any increases in our contracts. Our biggest contract is Umatilla Electric. That is negotiated, that is already set in the contract. Every 5 years, it goes along with a set amount, and so we'll see that in the next year. Inflationary costs, we're seeing big pressures on purchases of materials right now. The inflationary costs of our materials and our projects, not only in the cost, but also in the lead times. We had our construction work plan meeting in September, and projects that we were looking at trying to do in the first half of next year, materials were out past the start dates. We're looking at into the next budget cycle for some of these materials on projects that we're looking at. And then it also doesn't restore or build up our reserves. So we've spent the last couple of years spending them down. We still have the minimum reserve in place, but we're right about at it. And so if we have another situation where we need to look at using reserves to cover some cost pressures, we don't have a lot of flexibility in that. And so phase 1 and 2 were heavy lifts in our community during this time, and we certainly understand the rate pressure it's placing on our customers. But as a council, you guys still need to understand that the actions that we've taken so far just get us to that break-even point. It doesn't help us in any future rate pressures. We also know the best way for our customers to manage their electric bill is energy efficiency and conservation. You know, you can still get the comforts you desire and deserve, but energy efficiency can help. You know, when you see these rate pressures, this is the best time to be talking to us about coming in and looking at doing energy audits, weatherization programs. Coming into the winter months, you know, we have programs and education materials where we can come out and do an inventory of your house, check how your windows and doors are sealed, get underneath, check the insulation levels, and simple fixes. You know, a couple of tubes of caulking and some door seals or window seals can really make a big impact on your electric bill, especially coming into these winter months. And so we encourage all our customers to come and talk with us and communicate with us if they're feeling those rate pressures and look for low-cost, no-cost ways where we can help them. Another thing we've been doing over the past year, and this kind of leads into a little bit of what we talked about with conservation, is customers have communicated to us multiple times over the years that the way our billing cycles are is a little bit confusing. Historically, you get your December bill, but it's made up of 2 months. It's made up of part of October and part of November, and then you see this bill, and you try to look back and understand what your bill was. Well, it's a mix of 2 months labeled as 1 month. And so over the past 12 months, we've been slowly moving the billing cycle for customers. So we moved it about 10 days, and beginning October 1st, customer bills will actually be for the month of usage. And so your October bill will be the actual month of October usage. Your November, December, all the months going forward is actually month end. And what that does is it really helps you compare. You know, your mortgage, your other utilities are based on a calendar month. And getting on a calendar month helps not only the utility, but also the customers. So it helps the customers and for us to communicate with them a little easier to understand. When they're looking at energy efficiency and conservation decisions, it helps them kind of look at the year past, what was July like, what was June like, what was the previous year, is a little easier. The benefit for the utility is it's easier accounting for us. Our month end and year end really make a lot more sense because it actually ends and starts on the beginning and end of the month. And the investment we made with our smart meters allows us to do this. So we can actually capture the reading at 12 a.m. on the first day of the month and end it at 11:59 on the last day of the month. This is really helpful with our Bonneville Power Administration bill. This is how we're billed, and all their rate changes goes into effect on October 1st. And so if we can use our COSA to better manage that, it closes that gap and allows us to be even more precise in our projections and actuals. So we also remind people that during this time, we have apps and PayStation, Smart Hub, where you can actually go on, look at your usage, understand monthly usage, do comparables, contact us, talk about power outages. You can notify us all through the app. It gives you all your historical usage. It can break down your usage by the day, by the hour, into 15-minute increments. So we encourage people, if they don't want to come to the office, they can get a lot of their questions answered and get some information on our programs through the app. And so with that, that's an update from HES.
You, Nate. So, person is interested in the energy audit program.
Mm-hmm.
You said right now is a good time to do that. How would they go about doing that and getting a hold of you? Do they go through you, or where do they call?
So part of our operations and maintenance agreement with Umatilla Electric, we have a provision in there where they handle our energy efficiency and conservation. So customers can contact me directly, and I can put them in touch with the appropriate people at Umatilla Electric. You can go into Umatilla Electric's office, talk to them, but if you call our phone number and just say you want to speak with energy efficiency and conservation, they'll direct you to that department and get the process started.
Perfect. Other questions I had, how long is our capital debt still?
So we still owe $13,095,000. That's broken up over 2 series of bonds. The first one expires in 32. Second one expires the end of 36. We spend about $1 million a year in debt financing, so through 36. So the first one was the original purchase of HES, and the second one was we did a capital construction loan for multiple projects in 16.
Perfect. So another 15 years of debt or so.
Yeah.
And then how about the meter program? So when we bought those meters, did they come with some sort of service agreement or warranty, and how are those holding up, and how are we maintaining that?
They do come with a service warranty agreement with updates, firmware, software updates. They've really been a benefit for the utility as far as outage management and billing data. This COSA has been our best COSA that we've ever done as far as really understanding. It's because we've got granular information on usage. 2020 was an anomaly, and we were able to track that anomaly based on the previous 5 years of usage with the historical data from our meters. And that really is what I believe allowed us to get as close as we are on this COSA. So we've been thrilled with the meters. They've worked very well in the outage management. Historically, a lot of people didn't realize you had to call us before we knew you were out of power. We had no way to know until you called us that you were out. Now we have a system set up where when your meter loses power, it asks its neighbor, hey, do you have power? No, and then it keeps working itself all the way up the pipeline, and can pinpoint where the outage is at. And so that's really been a big help for outage management. So we're thrilled with it. Yes, we have a program in place. We have many more years of reliable service from them.
And do you have a increase projection, and when would be the next rate increase?
So they just finalized, that was one of the things we had talked about last November, is their next rate period started October 1st. We had been watching it because we did have that approximately $500,000 rate increase in 19. They were talking about a 1 to 3% rate increase, and the actual final for Hermiston Energy Service actually came a little under, so it negative about 1.5%. And so that helps the utility as well. So we had cushion right up to the edge to absorb that, and so that's going to help us get those revenues back to where we need it. So we're going to see over the 2 years approximately $100,000 in savings from BPA. Not significant on a $10 million budget, but it's better than paying an additional $100,000 to $150,000. So yeah, we did see that, and that's for the next 2 years, unless there's federal changes. They increase spill. Couple other things we always watch that can affect those, but they set the 2-year rate period.
Since you kind of went down that pathway, the federal infrastructure package, is there some sort of surcharges that are going to be placed on energy usage?
There is, if it does get in the weeds a little bit,
Yeah.
and so if I go too far, just let me know.
Just say yes or no.
Yes,
Okay.
there is based on Bonneville Power Administration's financial reserve policy.
Right.
When it gets below a certain percentage, they implement what's called a CRAC, a cost recovery, and that cost recovery gets spread amongst all BPA customers. So that has occurred in the last 2 years, where we've been billed additional amount based on their reserves getting low, and that's tied to a lot of spill issues, and it gets pretty deep, and if you guys would like to have a deep dive on that, we certainly can, but that's a full presentation as well. But we do actively monitor those pressures.
So I kind of got the impression that you're leading up to, the potential of a rate change. Is that something that we'll be considering in the future?
City Manager Smith and I have had several discussions about that. It's tough to go from a January 1 rate adjustment to an October 1st rate adjustment to look at the next rate adjustment. I mean, we've just in the first month of the next one. So that fatigue and allowing those customers to make those proactive changes in conservation energy efficiency, understand their usage better. We know we're going to have these continued conversations as our rate pressures come. One of the things we've been discussing is moving the electric utility into the infrastructure work group and doing regular updates to that group, and then possibly looking at, not this upcoming year, but the following year, being incorporated in that cost group as far as their rate structures, and looking at something on an annual basis, smaller bites, similar to what we do with our other utilities, versus getting in the situation we were in. And there was, we had some rate pressures of that big jump, and it was tough to include HES in that, but if we're all in that same bucket. So we're actively monitoring that. We're going to do a deep dive on a construction work plan so we can lay out what the long-term goals and needs are for the utility and have a better understanding how we can slowly implement those costs, but keep the utility still reliable and affordable.
Well, I did hear you say we've deferred maintenance and we're going to continue to defer maintenance. That's not something that's sustainable, right? So at some point, this council has to decide that that's important, and we're going to have to do something to adjust the rates so that we aren't deferring maintenance.
Yeah.
So,
And I apologize if I communicated, this phase 2 of this rate adjustment gets our full maintenance dollars back intact.
okay.
It doesn't include any of the capital construction projects. We know we still have about 6 miles of underground, that direct bury underground that we've had a lot of issues with. We've got most of it out, but that would be a capital construction work plan.
Okay.
But this includes the maintenance, the pole change outs, the higher risk
Good. Okay.
issues.
I misunderstood.
Sorry, I apologize.
What other questions from counselors? Yep. Ms. Myers?
Does that mean we are or are not anticipating a rate increase for 2022?
I never like to borrow trouble from tomorrow.
But I'd like to know.
Yeah, we are not, tonight, we're not projecting that we will have any rate action for the remainder of this fiscal year. So that takes us through the end of June. We don't anticipate coming to you for rate action before that. I think we're going to have some discussions at council retreat in February on some projects, and we'll come back to you, but nothing between now and the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess from sitting up there, we lost $800,000 through Hermiston Electric Services last year?
Yes, yeah, we had a rate deficiency. I wouldn't say yeah. We spent down reserves because,
When was the last time Hermiston Electric or Energy Services made a profit?
we're a not-for-profit utility, so the utility's not designed to make a profit, it's designed to cover its cost.
When was the last time we covered our costs?
The last time we covered our cost was in 17.
Okay. What would the rate have to be now to make sure we're able to cover our costs and to make the capital improvements we need to make?
The rate that you guys approved last November is covering all your costs. Now, what we look at and how aggressive you go in a capital improvement project and how you spread those costs over years would depend on how aggressive you want to be in a capital construction project. We can phase that to whatever level council is comfortable with. But to be able to say this is that number, we don't have that ability tonight without giving you options on how aggressive you want to be in capital projects.
Okay, so if we come back this time next year, will we still be operating at a rate deficiency?
No, you won't be. You're no longer at, in the middle of October, you're no longer operating at a rate deficiency of this year.
So if we can't, when we come back this time next year, there will no longer be a rate deficiency.
I can't guarantee that. I can't tell you what rate pressures we'll face that we can't predict. I can tell you we're not predicting and we haven't seen anything through the end of this fiscal year. So we're on track to be whole at the end of this fiscal year. The following fiscal year, we have decisions to make about capital construction work plans. We have rate increases potentially in our contracts. We have inflationary costs. We have federal mandates that potentially could come down. We have federal reserves from our power purchase agreements that can happen based on federal mandates with fish. And so there's a lot of moving parts to what happens with HES's rates. And so me talking with any level of certainty about a year from now, if nothing changes in my world between now and then, I can talk with a lot of certainty. Unfortunately, that's not what we typically see. So I try to put you in the best position financially possible, understanding the sensitivity of rates.
Okay. I guess other than raising our rates, what other ability does Hermiston Energy Services have to increase its income? Is there a greater customer base that we can be serving, or are we stuck with essentially the customers we have right now?
We have a defined service territory, so we cannot go out and essentially try to recruit additional customers in somebody else's service territory. Anytime there's infill, new residential subdivisions, things like that fill in our service territory. The new manufactured home park, that's an HES facility. So appropriate rates, that increases our revenue. If we go into different business lines, other utilities have pursued other lines of business. Broadband utilities, things like that have been partnered with. But unless we go out of our core business, the opportunity to increase revenue other than raising rates on customer classes, there's not an option. Now, there is an option to reduce spending, and that's what we've done. We've reduced spending to try to lower the impact. We reduce maintenance to try to lower those costs. We either can lower our costs or increase our revenue. And so we've done several years of lowering our costs, tightening our belt, only working on the necessities, and you can only take that so long before it affects your reliability. And so that's what we communicated last year was, we have done that. We have tightened our belts, but at a certain point we have to get whole as a utility for long-term sustainability.
One last question. How much do we have left in reserves?
90 days of full operating cash. So if we do not take another cent in, we can operate the utility for 90 days with zero revenue coming in. So that's our minimum financial policy on HES side, and that's where we're at.
So
We're just about there.
dollars-wise, how much is that?
2.5 million, approximately. I can get you the actual number.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councilor.
I think it's important too, the council, especially some of the members, understand Hermiston historically, though, has had this kind of seesaw action where we've gone many years without rate adjustments, and then we'll make a big pop, and then we'll see a big surplus, and we'll kind of spend it down, and then pop again. And so what we've tried to do over the last several years, at least in many of our departments, is to try and flatten that curve out so that we're not seeing the big increases and that we're getting more regular, easier to adjust to cost of living increases in our utilities. And I think what we're alluding to is trying to do that also with the energy services to the point at which we can. There's so much more in energy, though, outside of our control than, say, water and sewer potentially. And so it's harder to project what's going to happen with electricity in 5 or 10 years, especially with BPA and climate and infrastructure and costs of fuel and energy. It's hard to project. So I like that idea. I like that concept. If we can try and get it into a more expected cost increases on a more regularized basis versus the bigger changes that we've seen the last couple times we've had to have this conversation. Councilor Brown.
I just wanted to add, and I commend Councilor Spicer-Kuhn for asking the questions that you are. This was a long topic that we had this entire last year, and there were difficult decisions to make. As you saw, there was 2 separate increases of about 6%. The council had a way, if we wanted to do a 13% increase right off the bat, split them up into 2 of 6. And so because of the situation we're in with COVID and all the implications that had on people's employment and everything that came with it, that's the way the council decided to go. But we also recognize there's still a lot of need that we want to be able to, we want to get ahead of this, especially financially. However, because of the times that we're in, it's very difficult to try to justify such an increase. And so I look forward to our goal setting session to talk those matters over in more detail, and that way our council knows exactly where we're at and where we need to be.
Anderson, did I see your hand go up? No. Others? Yes. Mr. Ron?
I also want to give a shout out to the customer. I can give you that.
We're losing you if you're not speaking directly into your mic. There you go.
They have a question on their bill, and when they see the increase, they will be calling Umatilla, ask questions, and the customer service clerks have been trained to be able to explain why the increase happened, be able to let them know about all of the energy efficiency resources that they have in place, about the energy audits and all of that. So, and if hardships in paying their bill, they also are given information about CAPCO and the heat program as well. So I appreciate that, they do take their time to answer the questions and inform the customer so that they can know, what resources are available to them.
To that point, too, I think, in what Councilor Barone talked about last year, we also didn't cut anybody off. No. We allowed them to defer their payments. And kind of put some policies in place that were a lot more lenient during that time period. Can you give me an update on the status of that and where we're at?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor and Council. We did see, Hermiston Energy Services was the first electric utility in the state to actually implement a non-shutoff policy. And so thank you for your guys' guidance on that. But we did see some rate pressures on some past dues, and for the first time, we allowed customers to get up to 90 days in the arrears and delinquent payments. And we saw at one time about a quarter of our rate base at some level of delinquent payment between 30, 60, 90 days. That has been pretty much eradicated with generous donation from Amazon Web Services. They gave us approximately $75,000 in rate assistance. HES did its normal $20,000 plus an additional $25,000 in rate assistance to help our customers. And honestly, we feel like we're not completely out of it, but we've got everybody pretty much caught up. And so coming into these next couple of winter months, those decisions you make on your energy usage, we certainly are watching those, and we want to be proactive and work with our customers as best we can.
Perfect. Yeah, and just being mindful that we're still not out of it, and that there's still potentially some need coming forward. So I appreciate HES and UEC and our partners at Amazon Web Services and our consideration this last year for trying to find ways for people to make ends meet, and I think it's important that we continue to do that. Yes, Councilor Peterson.
Okay, so now I have something to say. So in light of the no shut-off policy and taking into account, what that power was being used for, it wasn't just used to keep the lights on, it was used to keep the education going. And so thinking about, all right, something had to keep those computers getting charged so the students could, access, their schooling. And how much worse off would we be if that hadn't been done? And so, a lot goes into electricity and a lot comes out of it. And so that was an investment in our whole community. And so I'm just sitting here thinking about it. It's like, that's huge. So.
And we certainly appreciate you recognizing the value of owning an electric utility and the responsibility that comes with that, but the tremendous value it does bring to our community. And so thank you. I appreciate that.
I do want to be mindful that we have another presentation this evening. Do you have anything else you would like to say?
As always, I just appreciate the conversation and the questions. They help us make better recommendations to you, and any feedback that you give us, it helps us understand what you guys want to know. And so I took a lot from tonight, and the next time we circle back, hopefully we can be a little more thorough in some of these areas. So I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Smith, did you have anything else to follow up on that? Okay. So what is the reason we're talking about sanitary disposal?
So sanitary disposal is being sold to another company, so that's what we're going to talk about. Mr. Morgan, are you ready?
Welcome, Mr.
I was
Morgan.
born ready.
Yeah, all right.
All right, so I realize we only have about 20 minutes left here this evening. There is kind of a logical stopping point through my conversation, so if we want to wrap back around to this and talk maybe about a little bit at the tail end of the council meeting, again, this evening, we're not expecting any council action during the council meeting later on this evening, so we can still maybe talk about the rest of it later on this evening. So, what's happening? We've received a request from Sanitary Disposal to assign their solid waste franchise to a company called Waste Connections. So why do we care? In Hermiston, garbage collection service is provided by a franchise. That city-awarded franchise protects the service from competition, and really that really helps guarantee a stable environment for both the customers, the city, and the franchisee. So it helps us guarantee that we know that we have somebody who's able to provide that service without undue pressure. So it helps protect the residents and the franchisee. But in exchange for basically being granted a monopoly, that franchise can't be sold or transferred without city council approval. So who is Waste Connections? It's just a screen grab from their website. They're based out of Texas. Here's a bunch of their locations across the United States. They're a national solid waste hauler. Probably pretty important to keep in mind. They fairly recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, acquired Findlay Buttes landfill, which is where all of our waste ends up right now. And just on the Oregon side of the river, some of their nearby operations include the Dalles Disposal and Hood River Garbage. So Sanitary Disposal, their current franchise dates back to 1994, but they've really been the regional provider. Sanitary Disposal Inc. has been the regional solid waste hauler for about 50 years now. So what they do for us is they do all of the curbside trash collection. They do all of the commercial dumpsters, roll-offs if you have major demolition, something like that. You want to order a temporary dumpster, that type of thing. Also, they manage our Opportunity to Recycle program. That's really an obligation on the community, and that's a state DEQ requirement, and that's where we don't have something like curbside recycling in the community, but we have to make sure that the opportunity to recycle is available within the community. So that's where we have recycling depots at a couple of locations throughout the community, one of those being over off of Harper Road, actually, over by Home Depot. That's where you can take cardboard, plastic, those types of things. Also, the Opportunity Recycle Depot is up at the transfer station up off of Kick Road. So the transfer station may be important to keep in mind. That is owned by Sanitary Disposal Inc., but again, Sanitary Disposal provides service for really all the communities in the region, so Boardman, Irrigan, Umatilla, Stanfield, Hermiston, unincorporated areas. So the ownership of that transfer facility, that's not governed by our city franchise because it does accept waste through across the region. All of the neighborhood collection trucks collect all of the waste in the city, take it up there, it gets collected, and then they put it on a truck and haul it out to Findlay Buttes. So I know some of the counselors probably would be curious to learn a little bit more about recycling, particularly ones who maybe haven't been on council since 2015. Back in 2015, then Councilor Gutierrez asked about what we could do as far as potentially looking at curbside recycling, and we put a significant amount of effort into looking into that as an option with Sanitary Disposal. They really did their best identifying a way to really test out the concept so that they could really wrap their minds around what the true costs to their system would be if they were to implement something like that. They identified a targeted, basically a route on their system to test it out. So there were 100 customers that were invited to participate in a pilot program just to see how that concept would work in practice. 17 customers agreed to participate. That program ran for 5 months, and at the end of it, Sanitary Disposal estimated that they could probably accomplish a curbside recycling program throughout the community in our 5,500 accounts at an additional cost to the residential customer of about $4.50 per month. When that was brought back to the council in approximately December of 2015, the council, including Councilor Gutierrez, indicated that they didn't want to pursue increasing the cost at that time. So that's where curbside recycling ended at that point. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good because about 12 months later, China announced that they were going to stop accepting the world's trash disguised as recyclables. And so basically they said it just cost too much for them to sort through contaminated recycling by people who think even though things they're not able to be recyclable, maybe they should be recyclable. And so it ends up contaminating the waste stream that would end up over there, and it just cost them too much to sort through. So that was a major impact to the international recycling markets, and those markets are still in flux. Obviously, China was taking in a massive amount, really all of the world's recyclable materials, and trying to sort through all those. So there's still a lot of competition for individual various types of commodities at various locations around the U.S. and around the Pacific region. And so there's just a lot still taking place in the recycling markets. They're maybe starting to settle down a little bit, but we're still never going to get too far away from some of the issues that really constrain our ability to do recycling in a market of our size. And really all of it gets back to taking that commodity, whether it's cardboard or paper or plastic, whatever it is, batching it up and hauling it to a place that you can then batch it up into larger batches and either put it on an ocean-going container or a unit train or someplace so that then they can take it to a place that it's financially viable to recycle it. So that's always going to be one of our struggles when it comes to recycling. So recycling ahead, the DEQ governs recycling here in Oregon. The Oregon legislature, they realize that there's still a lot of volatility in the recycling markets, but they're still pressing on with a lot of requirements on local communities in the form of requirements for implementing recycling policies. And so it's been communicated to us from Sanitary Disposal over the last couple of years that our opportunity to recycle program, which is really an exemption from some of the statewide recycling requirements, some of those exemptions are likely to start slowly disappearing, partly from new requirements from the state, but also just as a virtue of our regional communities continuing to outgrow some of those size exemptions that we'd otherwise be allowed to receive. So the proposal to assign the overall solid waste collection franchise, Waste Connections is basically proposing to purchase most of Sanitary Disposal's assets. That includes collection trucks, all of their carts and dumpsters and everything, et cetera, their transfer station. Their proposal is to maintain status quo service in Hermiston, which includes curbside garbage. At this time, no curbside recycling, with the understanding that we know that potential additional statewide recycling mandates might be on the horizon in the next couple of years. Additionally, they would request status quo in terms of rates to the customers, but then also terms from the city in terms of franchise and costs that we assign to the company. So our current term on the franchise, which is what they would be requesting to continue, in our code it's referred to as a continuing 5-year franchise, which it functions as an automatic annual renewal. So the franchise is automatically renewed every January 1st unless we had given them notice that without cause, unless we had given them notice 5 years previously that we planned to cancel the franchise 5 years from now. So if we wanted to cancel the franchise, we have to give them notice today, and then it can't be ended until 5 years from now. Otherwise, it automatically renews every single year. And again, that's without cause. You can obviously end some of these things with cause, but it's quite a challenge. So currently, on the administration side of things, city staff does all of the billing for all garbage accounts inside of the city limits. In exchange for doing that service for sanitary disposal, the city keeps 11% of the gross revenues collected for that service inside of the city limits. That comes out to about $280,000 per year that goes directly to the city's general fund. On top of that, like we do with all of our other franchises, we charge a franchise fee, which is basically our what we're keeping in exchange for providing them with a monopoly within the city. And so the city keeps right now 2.5% of gross revenues. So between the billing fee and the franchise fee, it's about $340,000 a year that goes to the city's general fund. So some options to consider. We could accept the proposal to transfer, which we received this request from Waste Connections and Sanitary Disposal about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Spent some time reviewing it fairly in depth. And so at this point, that's my recommendation, is to accept their proposal to allow that transfer. We could seek other offers for garbage collection services by RFP, or we could take over the service internally and provide that with city staff. So to accept the proposal to transfer, again, this is kind of the status quo option, at least on the short term, over the range of 12 to 15, 18 months. We feel pretty confident that they would maintain the current rate structure and all those things. So status quo in terms of billing, administrative fees, all of those components. We did reach out to several of the regional communities served by Waste Connections. We've received good references from them, unsolicited, out of the blue. We contacted them. Got good references from those other communities about Waste Connections and their ability to serve their communities. Also, I think one of the intangibles associated with this, and a pretty valuable one, is gaining or being able to rely on Waste Connections' national and statewide expertise. Not only do they have national expertise in recycling markets, but also they have other communities that they serve, so they are able to combine, some of their monitoring and that type of thing with changes in state law and that type of thing on the recycling front. So that is kind of an intangible benefit that's difficult to quantify. One of the options is to seek other offers through something like an RFP. Important to keep in mind there's a very limited qualified pool out there. Waste Management and Republic are really the two other really large national outfits that maybe somebody that would bid on something like this. Pendleton Sanitary Service is very similar to Sanitary Disposal Inc. here in Hermiston. They may bid on something like this. Sanitary Disposal already sought a lot of these, financial offers or considered a lot of those things. So I think that's important to keep in mind before we were to do something like issuing an RFP. Also important to keep in mind, it's not necessarily a challenge for us. It may make things less viable for us, but is if we went out for RFP, unless we coordinated with all of the other regional communities, we could get a kind of a bifurcation of regional services if we went out on our own for something like this. And then also important to keep in mind, Waste Connections would still own Finley Butte's landfill and may also continue to own the transfer station. So that would put us in a bit of a challenging position from a business standpoint. So on the municipalization side of things, I'm really basing this off of my experience up with the city of Cheney, Washington. They're about 13,000 people. They municipalized their solid waste service back January 1st of 2011. Throughout 2011, I was actually an intern with the city of Cheney, and I worked to develop their solid waste management plan. I called up there to see how things were going here about 10 years later. Sounds like things are going really pretty well, basically how they predicted. And I was actually happy to see that they're still actually using my solid waste management plan that I developed as an intern. So that was interesting to see. They also indicated that really a lot of those financial forecasts were still holding up. So things were going well, but they were in a real challenging position in terms of getting basically bullied by some of the other users in the region. So I think it's a pretty different situation compared to what we're looking at here. So what I did was I basically took that solid waste management plan that I developed for the city of Cheney, and it's a pretty straightforward process once you've done one before for a year. Took that as a template basically and went through all of these components. And so what I came out with out the other end is, after looking at this and projecting it out over the course of 10 years, at a very, very high level, being pretty conservative on estimating high on expenses and kind of low on revenue growth, I feel like if we were to municipalize the system, we would probably see, averaged over the course of 10 years, out the other end, about a 6.3% margin or 6.3% profit compared to maintaining the status quo. So a lot of things that get taken into arriving at that number, looking at public sector labor rates, PERS, insurance, cost of living adjustments, step and grade increases over time, looking at all of the various staff that we would have to bring on, CDL drivers, backup drivers, supervisors, those types of things. Looking at tipping fees, where we would end up hauling it to, which would still most likely be Finley Butte's, accounting for increases in tipping fees at Finley Butte's, accounting for tonnage growth within the community. Looking at materials and services, based a lot of this off of, again, Cheney's, scaling it up to Hermiston, looking at insurance, machinery and equipment repairs, fuel and oil, all those types of expenses. And then one of the single largest costs for us up front would be, the equipment and the debt financing for that, because we'd have to go out and purchase quite a large capital outlay for collection trucks, roll-off trucks, 5,000 residential carts, commercial dumpsters, construct a building to house a lot of these things, and then just the financing costs associated with purchasing that. So what that ends up looking like with about a 6.3% margin is about $170,000 per year. So what that ends up backing its way all the way back down to on the customer side of things is it could end up saving customers somewhere in the range of about $2.57 per customer per month. Could. Again, it's pretty high level conceptual look at it. But again, on the regional impact, what does that do if we were to municipalize just inside of the city? how does that impact customers that are outside our city limits in Umatilla, Stanfield, other areas in the region? And then again, kind of the intangible there that's difficult to project the expenses on is really what's going to happen at the state level on recycling requirements and what that's going to do as far as having somebody internally who can manage, basically marketing our recyclable commodities over time. So that's really one of the biggest unknowns when it comes to, that can really throw off a lot of these financial projections. So my recommendation for council to consider is to continue to negotiate and finalize an approval to transfer the franchise from Sanitary Disposal to Waste Connections. I recommend that we could bring that to the council for approval at your November 8th council meeting, with the important caveat that throughout all of that, we would look to maintain all of the billing services internal to the city. And that really allows us to keep a firm grasp on customer totals, tonnages, all of those types of things, so that allows us, if and when a rate increase request comes from our supplier, that gives us the ability to basically run these same analyses again and verify, whether or not this is something that if, council ever chose to, we could still theoretically bring something like this in-house. So with that, you've got 5 minutes for questions.
Yeah, it's good to go second, because that way you don't get as many questions. Our current franchise with SDI is up when?
So it's on that 5-year automatic renewal. So
Okay.
if we were to give them notice today, it wouldn't cancel for 5 years from January 1st.
So, but they, on a fairly regular basis, like every 2 years, or is it just when they feel like they need a cost increase?
No, they've been pretty good about really only coming to us whenever they can, feel like they can justify a rate adjustment. A lot of that too, they have to manage. They serve the city of Hermiston, but they also serve Umatilla, Stanfield, unincorporated areas. So they have to make that same rate request basically to every single community around the region. So there hasn't been any set time that they can come to us and request rate adjustments.
We don't have a guarantee the new company is going to hold the line as far as rates.
Correct.
Okay. The other question I had was on the franchise fee, the 2.5% you mentioned, is that a state requirements, or is that just something we have established?
No, to my knowledge, I don't know that there is a max by state requirement,
Okay.
but it doesn't take a PhD economist to know that anything that we apply there, it's really getting passed through directly to the customers.
I just go with it. Why?
Well, we're right in.
Same thing. Franchise fee we charge, right? It gets passed along to the consumer.
Yeah, so it's right in there with what is charged here regionally. I haven't looked statewide. One of the components that gets a little bit challenging to compare on kind of an apples-to-apples basis is, if we're looking at some of the communities over on the west side, they might not do that internal billing, and so maybe their franchise fee is a little bit different because, again, that billing component goes directly towards offsetting our front desk utility billing staff.
And if they say they don't want us doing the internal billing?
I've already talked to them
Oh,
about
they're
that.
okay with it?
They've indicated that they're
Okay.
they're willing to just maintain status quo, including the utility billing,
Other questions from the council?
including
billing.
us doing the billing for them.
Yes, Mr. Primer.
So have we checked with some of the other customers of this company on how they handle their rate increases or the frequency of theirs?
Not specifically on how they handle rate increases, but I did reach out to 2 of the other communities in Oregon, and I was actually a little bit surprised they were more positive maybe than I thought maybe they would be, other than just saying, yeah, they're a fine company. They actually gave positive references or reviews about how they felt they've operated in the community. So I guess if they didn't do a good job on rate requests, then maybe that would have
Yeah.
colored it.
That's good. Mr. Barone?
As far as the employees from SDI, are they going to transfer over to the new organization?
That's not a question that I have an answer for. I think that's really up to the individual employees and SDI and Waste Connections. I'm sure that's probably the hope of Waste Connections. And
Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
How much does it cost the city on a yearly basis to do the billing?
we've never really broken that out, but basically we include their their bill on what we're already mailing out. So we're not doing like any additional mailing, like we don't mail out an individual garbage bill or anything like that. It's all included. So ultimately, I think it doesn't cost us, $266,000 necessarily to do that on an annual basis, but it does help us, offset that cost. And we do have to answer phones, when folks call about their collection services and stuff. So it's difficult to really quantify how much we can directly attribute to sanitary disposal service.
Other questions, Council? All right, so no decisions this evening. Is that right?
Yeah, no request for any decisions this evening. Just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that you had this, because it is all of the community wanted to make sure that you had some opportunity to think about it before we bring it to you, hopefully November 8th for a final decision. So if you have any questions or think about anything, direct those questions to Councilor Smith or ask me or something like that.
I
So
have one question.
Yeah.
So have we asked Umatilla or Stanfield or any of the surrounding areas how they feel?
yeah, we've generally talked about it really in high level terms, a couple of weeks ago. I don't think that anybody's looking at doing anything, really out of the box necessarily, so.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Appreciate it. And Council, if you have any further questions, make sure you reach out to City Manager Smith or Assistant City Manager Morgan before the November 8th, I guess, is going to be coming decision. All right, so I'm going to say we're closing the work session. Does the council need a quick break to go to the restroom or anything, or should we just roll through this? Everybody's good? I think we can knock it out pretty quickly tonight. We'll see. So we're going to open up the regular city council meeting. If you are just joining us, we had a work session with the city council this evening to discuss Hermiston Energy Services and sanitary disposal. I'm going to declare a quorum. All members are present this evening. Please join me in the flag salute. Well, welcome everyone this evening. We do have a new member sitting at the dais with us. Mr. Smith, would you like to introduce our newest member?
Yes, we have our city attorney, Mr. Rich Tuvey, here to be at his first city council meeting.
You would like to tell the community, it's just like the one opportunity you get to speak freely about yourself and who you are and all that sort of stuff to the live audience of the community.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm happy to be here.
Welcome, Mr. Tuvey. Me, that's quiet and keeps to himself and keeps us safe and protected. Thank you for joining us. All right, so Mr. Smith, we did have a small change, just for the council and the public's notice. We forgot to include the presentation from our Hermiston School District on the original agenda, so we're going to make that small change. Is that the only change that we needed to make?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we're going to go right to that. I see our high school assistant principal is here, Michael Thomas. Come on up, Michael. Welcome. Yes, there you go.
All right, there we go. Can I take this off, or do I need to leave it on?
No, you can take it off while you speak.
Take it off, all right. You didn't need to amend the agenda. I could have gone home. But I was asked to come and just talk a little bit about some of the things that have been going on in the school district lately, and especially in regards to last week. We had our homecoming week last week. A lot of activities. It was a lot of fun. A lot of kids involved in a lot of different things. We started the week and just talk a little bit about day by day. Monday was hippie day, so everybody got to dress up like hippies. I will admit I did not, but we had a lot of fun costumes. And then Monday evening we had a JV football game followed by our powder puff football. We had teams from each of the grades, and they had a nice hard-fought battle in the championship game. It was actually kind of fun. The seniors beat the freshmen 3-2, so we had a really good freshman girls team playing. It was pretty fun. Tuesday we had a volleyball game. Tuesday was also dynamic duo day, so we saw a lot of salt and pepper duos running around the school. We had a girls volleyball match that evening, excuse me, and followed by men's volleyball. So the boys got to go out, and it was not quite as graceful as the girls, but they had an enjoyable time, and I believe again the seniors won that one too. It was a pretty good. It was fun to watch. A lot of kids there. Wednesday we had Western Day, so for a lot of kids that was pretty normal dress. That evening we had our bonfire and tug of war. We actually did maybe a better job this year on the mud pit than we've ever done. I know that's probably not super exciting for everybody, but usually we've just dug a hole and filled it full of water. This year they actually went out and they dug the dirt up, and then they put the water in, and then they just moved it back and forth till it was about this deep of mud. Made for a much more interesting tug of war. And football team won. They tend to have a little more beef than everyone else, but it was a lot of fun, and kids had a good time. And then what was really interesting is a lot of years we'll have the bonfire, but once the tug of war is over, the kids just kind of start to disperse. And this year, I think just with everything going on, the kids, they just are enjoying being together. And we finally had to push them out because they just went to the bonfire and they hung out for at least another hour. And we finally had to call the fire department to put the fire out so they'd go home. But it was a lot of fun. Kids had a really good time that night. Thursday we did Purple and Gold Day and also Toga Day. So we saw a lot of bed sheets running around the school. But that night we had girls soccer and a pancake feed, so we got to make a lot of pancakes, and kids came by and ate, and it was fun. Friday night Friday during the day we didn't have school. It was an in-service day, state in-service day for the teachers, but Friday night we had our football game. Didn't go quite as well as we hoped, but it was still a lot of fun, and kids did well. And then Saturday night we had our homecoming dance, and probably, at least since I've been here, the largest dance we've ever had. We actually went up to Chute 8 up at the fairgrounds, up at EOTech. That way it was outdoors and a little more COVID friendly. But we sold 950 tickets to that dance. Biggest one I'd seen up to that point was probably about 600. So, like I said, the kids are excited to be together. They're excited to be out doing things. The dance was a lot of fun, and on the kids' request, it was only from 8 to 10, so I was super excited. It was only 2 hours. But they had a great time. And it's fun to see the kids getting together. It's fun to see them out doing things. I know that obviously we're still wearing masks at school, which it's not fun, but the kids are rolling with it. Kids are doing a really good job, and they're showing up, and they're doing the things they need to do, and we're just happy things are going as well as they're going. So that's my report. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I've been to a few of the games and saw that the Kennel Club, it's probably as big a group as I've seen in a long time showing up. And some of our teams haven't necessarily been all that spectacular this year, and they're still turning out every game and showing really support for their fellow class and their community. And so I appreciate all that they're turning out for their community and their school. So I would just pass along my congratulations to you guys and helping motivate them and encourage them to engage and keep the spirits high back at school. So,
thank you.
Any other comments or questions from?
I actually,
Yes.
I was going to have, I started putting a slideshow together when they told me, and they said, oh, no, nobody usually does that. And then I walk in, and this guy had a beautiful slideshow going. I would have had pictures for you and all kinds of stuff.
That would have been fun. Next time.
Yeah.
Mr. On. I don't think your microphone got turned on. Broke.
Oh, what's going on? Sorry about that. So I just learned today that there's going to be a listening and learning session for the community so that they can go and hear information from district administrators and the community can have an open dialogue. And it's scheduled for October 18th. That's next Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. In the Armin Larby Commons area. So the community parents are invited to go and have their questions answered about anything they might want to know.
Open
Yes.
community discussion with district administrators about any topic?
Yes.
Nothing specific? Okay. And that's the 18th, 7:30?
7 to 8 p.m.
7 to 8 p.m. at Armin Larby in the cafetorium. Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
All right, thank you.
So now we're at the opportunity for citizen input on non-agenda items. So if there are citizens here this evening that would like to speak to the council, please come up to the microphone up front, introduce yourself by name and address, direct your comments to me, and try and limit them to less than 5 minutes. Welcome.
Lee Hansen, 2110 South Highway 395. It was on 6/10 of 2018 that I got a call just before 5 a.m. from my brother who had gotten toned out to help fight the fire at the church on Highland. Anyhow, we've got it back together. We're going to have an open house on this coming Sunday from 1 to 4 o'clock. And so I just wanted to give the invitation to everybody to come. I've got a few invitation cards I'll leave here for you to pick up. Thank you.
That's this Sunday,
That's this Sunday.
1 o'clock.
1 to 4.
And you want to tell me which church?
It's a Seventh-day Adventist
Okay,
church.
Seventh-day Adventist Church, this Sunday, 1 o'clock. By the way, it looks beautiful. Glad to see the landscaping's getting done.
It's
It
finally
looks
getting there.
awesome. Yeah, you guys did a really, really nice job. So congratulate your architects and the designers and all that sort of stuff. It really turned out really
Yeah,
nice.
you enjoy the tour of it then.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Cool.
thanks.
Thanks, Lee. Anyone else? Yes? I don't think it's, there you go.
We'll do that again. Hello, everyone. It's been a while. Good to see you all. Just a couple of things. One, I like to say congratulations and thank you on how the city is doing the coupons where you can go downstairs and get one and it has the list of the 15 and you can go to any one that you want to go to. I like it done that way and I was hoping that maybe the chamber would change it to do it that way because my kids like Subway. And so I called them. They said, okay, you can come in 9 to 1. I don't do Subway, but anyway, that's another story. So I get there about 5 minutes to 1, and the place is closed, so they missed out.
Huh.
And then I call and say, okay, well, what are you going to do the next week? And then I think they did a Starbucks, but if you're working, you can't just leave your job and go to Starbucks at 9 o'clock. So I think, and I'm hoping that they would change it to where they either they can give them out or they just leave coupons there the day before, and then when anybody goes in, however number that those people use for that day is just used up that way for whatever restaurant that they're doing it at. And the other thing that I would like to know is with the sanitation disposal about that is will the city be able to hold down the rates, or will they have to ask for permission in order to increase the rates, and will that be in the contract that all of that is taken care of? I don't know how that's done, but I would like to know that in the next meeting or November 8th, how that'll be, so that the citizens of Hermiston won't have like we got the 12% with the electricity that's needed and all, but when I'm like, I get my bill, I'm like, holy moly guacamole. That's kind of high, and I'm just one person, you know. And so if you have people that have 4 and 5 kids and more, and having to use a lot of things for a lot of different things, their bill can be pretty high. I'm grateful to God that I can afford mine, but thinking about other people, you know. And I'm really concerned that these people are out of Texas, let me tell you. After the electricity with Texas, and people getting $5,000 bills and all of this stuff, and my family's from Texas, so okay, don't like Texas. Anyway, that does kind of concern me with Texas.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Thank you, Jackie. I think the council shares your concerns too about costs, and Mr. Morgan, I guess when you come back on November 8th, if you could talk to those other communities and see how they handled the transition and the cost increases and that sort of stuff. I think the council and the community would appreciate that. Any other public comment? Yes, come on up.
Virginia Rome Garcia, 435 East Sunset Drive, Hermiston. I'm just here to say that I am kind of grateful and thankful for the city of Hermiston, Echo, Umatilla, and all those getting together to help solve this problem. Maybe not solve the problem, but work with the problem that we're having with the homeless individuals here in the Hermiston area and the surrounding areas. Today I had the experience, I went to, a friend of mine has just purchased the laundromat right there on Main Street, right in front of Jason Estel's establishment there, the Rose Ministry?
Desert Rose Ministry.
Desert Ministry. But anyways, I noticed there were about three individuals there, you know, and there's no bathrooms there. There's nothing there, but it's a place for them to, you know, get out of the cold. And we're going to continue to see that. The other young lady, she just went from one door to the other room and back in again. I don't know. Anyways, but I'm glad that the city of Hermiston, along with the Umatilla County and the surrounding areas, is working together to work on these homeless issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Yeah, it's a very complex issue, and it's going to require a community-wide, very complex solution. So hopefully we can. Anything else this evening? Okay, we're going to move on to the agenda, consent agenda items A through D. Any of those that we need to pull? Seeing none. Is there any public comments on agenda items A through D? Can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A through D?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Davis, second by Councilor Primer, that we approve the consent agenda items as presented, A through D. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Good to see we have some more housing developments opening up too. So that was nice in the consent agenda. Another 32 houses potentially. Is that what I read?
35, I think.
35. Okay. Yeah. So we're on to the ordinances, and how well Mr. Tubby does at this. City Manager Smith, ordinance number 9, an ordinance amending Chapter 70 General Provisions, Chapter 71 Traffic Rules, 72 Parking Regulations, 73 Bicycle Operation of the Hermiston Municipal Code.
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
All right.
So these three ordinances, just so you know, they're the last three that Mr. Luisi drafted before he finished. So we reviewed those. And again, this is our efforts to kind of go through housekeeping. Just to highlight a few things that are a little bit different in here. The code enforcement, it basically allows code enforcement to be an enforcement entity under these chapters, where in the past they may not have been able to cite someone for a parking violation. It had to be done by a police officer. So this kind of would free up police officers to do different tasks. It also establishes an option to send violations to a hearing officer. That's a chapter that was adopted probably 9 months to a year ago, but it gives another process rather than only being able to go through the municipal court. It can go through a hearing officer process. And then it establishes a parade permit process, which we had somewhat in the ordinance. You can see the old language, but this is a lot more clear and defined. And then it really simplifies the regulation of bicycles. I guess in the past that was a real point of emphasis, I think. So we removed a lot of language related to bicycles, but still hitting the points that are important. So those are the major high points. Be happy to answer any questions.
So when you say we removed the regulations of bicycles. We didn't make it more difficult to use a bicycle in the community.
No, we made it easier to use
Easier to use a
bicycles.
bicycle in the community. We want to be a bicycle-friendly community.
That's right.
Okay. Any other questions from the council of Mr. Smith on the changes? Yeah.
I have a couple.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the bike one, it says no bicycling in a commercial zone. Where are we considering on the sidewalks?
That's the downtown area, if I'm correct. Is that right, Clint? Yeah. That's on the downtown sidewalks within that part of the city.
Okay. And then on the parade process, the review goes from the city manager to circuit court, bypasses us. Is there a reason for that? It's
I don't
number
remember
H.
that. I missed that part.
It says, city manager shall conduct an informal review, including any additional information provided by the appellant, and promptly issue a decision affirming, reversing, or modifying the decision. Any further appeal shall be to circuit court.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, would the council prefer to have it be appealed to you? I mean, I don't know what other entity we would send it to, I guess.
Well, just like I said, we have that quasi judicial ability, whereas, and then by bypassing the ability to come to council, it just goes directly to circuit court. That's, to me, that seems kind of, I don't know. I feel like it, that the appellant should have the ability to come to us as well. But I mean, I understand that with the time frame consideration, that may not be, but getting into circuit court may be even less like easy to do. So I think me personally, I would like to see it have them the ability to bring their appeal to us as well before going to circuit court.
Yeah, so
that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. What I'd like to, I'd probably like to take if we can table this and give us a chance to look at exactly why that might have been the case. If there's something that we're not catching, I don't want to change it tonight and then come back and say, well, we really should have done X, Y, Z. So
71.01H.
Yeah, it's page 21 of the deal, and it's on number.
Yeah, it's 21 on the packet.
Okay, well then, can I make a motion that we table this?
So there's several sections that we're approving here. Is it all under one ordinance?
Yeah, on this, for this ordinance, I would like to just table this whole ordinance if we could.
So we have a motion to consider tabling ordinance number 2329. Can I hear a second? Okay. Then
Second.
Moved by Councilor Bremer, seconded by Councilor Duran, that we table ordinance number 2329 for later consideration. Any public comment on that? Roll call. Yes.
I wanted to have some discussion on that. I guess I understand where this is coming from, but I guess I would believe that it would go to the chief or the city manager, maybe for more legality purposes, to see if it's even feasible in the first place, something that council probably wouldn't really know
Well,
about.
but it's going through them first, though. It's going to go to the chief and then to the city manager.
Right,
if they
and
want
for
to
example,
continue
if
to
I
appeal
said
it,
no, then right now the option is go to
Okay,
circuit
so
court.
having
Then it
us
would
as a
come back.
third, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Understood.
I guess I do have some worries about that, and essentially it's just inviting them to sue us. I mean, I don't know how you would do an appeal to circuit court from here without starting some sort of a lawsuit.
well, that's,
So,
if we can just take a look at it, we can come back and better address any questions.
Yes.
So
Peterson.
with that in mind and looking at all of these, and we have our new team member here, and if I may ask, have you had a chance to Because we're asking you to help be part of the process of looking through all of these, and to what regard you've had a chance to familiarize yourself with this specific matter. You know,
Sure.
You know.
So this specific matter, I haven't had a chance to really dig in. I wasn't part of the discussions as far as putting it together. I've been able to review all the documents for tonight's meeting as far as form and content, but I can't speak to that section right now. I think the issues that were raised by Councilman Primer, I think, definitely lead to some discussion about what process needs to be in there, and we can review that.
and with that in mind, looking at, okay, well then we have these other two then follow right after. If that's true about the first one, you know, might this not be something that we want to table entirely? Just to give everyone a chance to take a look at where we are now.
Well, I think, you know, we've had, to be respectful of what's happened in the past, we've had a lot of success with the previous ordinances, and we can address each one as it comes up, and if there are issues with each one, then obviously we could take that decision at that time. I wouldn't want to do all three at once. So we do have a motion and a second. Any other comments before I go to a roll call? Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. We're going to table ordinance number 2329 till future city council meeting. All right, ordinance number 2330, an ordinance amending chapter 92 of the Hermiston Municipal Code entitled Nuisances. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, so this really makes no large changes in the policy. It clarifies some definitions and kind of updates a few spots of language related to kind of current practice. One of the things, this ordinance is related to the next one, in that a number of the items that were included in the chapter 135 then were moved into the nuisance chapter, rather than, it didn't really match with structural maintenance. That dealt with some specific building related things. Anything in the yard and other places were moved into the nuisance chapter. So those were the only additional areas that were brought in from 135.
Questions? Yeah.
I guess coming somewhat to Councilor Primmer's, while reading through this, I noticed that we kind of got rid of, and in the next nuisance, in the nuisance section, the ability for the city to do abate nuisances itself, and all of these require abatement of nuisances only upon court order. So anytime we wanted to abate a nuisance, we would have to get an order from a court. At least that was my reading of these ordinances, and I was wondering why we went that route. I wasn't really, I mean, as long as we have a good nuisance abatement process in place and there's an appeals process, I don't know why we would need court order every time, and that's lengthening any time frame it's going to take for us to abate these nuisances.
Mr. Spencer, do you have any?
Generally, when you're going in for an actual abatement process, that's when you're entering onto the private property, so you do need to have the administrative order in place to be doing that. Generally, when we're doing things, we try to head anything off before it ever gets to the point that the city needs to go in and bring in the abatement contractor. So generally, just by educating, we get about 95% compliance to go in, and the property owner will clean something up. But if we're going to go in and do it, we do have to have that order in place.
Well, you said an administrative order. These are asking for court orders. I mean, that's going to be a legal order for us to enter. It's going to require us to petition in some process to the court, asking for them to order the abatement to be done, giving them a chance to reply. We're going to have to serve them with, you know, probably some sort of form of complaint. They're going to get 30 days to respond, and then they get an opportunity to set a trial, all before we can get a court order, or we're going to be able to get a court-ordered abatement. So it's going to just stretch that abatement process out a long ways.
administrative order and a court order. If it's an administrative order, is that just the city manager doing it?
Yeah, I believe I just misspoke when I
Okay.
was saying that, because I was thinking the difference between an administrative warrant, and so I believe I just misspoke on that part.
Right. Under the previous code, we didn't have to get that court order. We were able to go in there and make an administrative decision, which would mean in the city to do the abatement, give them the appropriate notice that we're coming in to do it, and then go in and abate the nuisance. But under this new way that it's drafted, we would have to take everything to court. We wouldn't go through our municipal court either. Based off what I see in here, it would all need to go through circuit court in order to get any of those orders.
You have a section where
Well, the first spot I noticed it was in 9210C, which was abatement of odoriferous nuisances. But as I read through it, it continued the same language for all the abatement sections. So.
We have a generalized abatement process at the end of the code. We'll find it.
Yeah, first off, I guess in section 9214C, a person, after a nuisance is declared, and that's declared by the city, then they get the opportunity to appeal to circuit court as provided by law. I'm not sure which law covers that. And then abatement, nuisance is not abated. They file an action to obtain such warrants and orders from a court as necessary for the city to enter onto property. So this is 92.15B.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I think we'd like to take some more time on this one.
Okay.
Would that be chapter 92 and chapter 135?
It's ordinance 2330, the whole order. Got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any public comment? The motion was by Mr. Primer, the second was by Councilor Davis. Did you get that, Billy? Any public comment? And you guys are okay tabling this?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Say yes, I'm sorry.
I said yes.
Yes, motion passes unanimously, 8-0. We may get to Mrs. Peterson's request anyway. Ordinance number 2331, an ordinance amending Chapter 135 of the Hermiston Municipal Code entitled Structural Maintenance Regulations. Mr. Smith.
Any questions?
What's a floating point?
Well, I hope we're almost out of them.
Depends on the time of year.
I guess, do we have a commercial structural code? I noticed that going through here that all of the provisions were changed to add residential in front of the code provisions, which would mean that these wouldn't apply to any commercial structures.
Same question on that as we were reviewing this, and yes, the commercial code is a different area, so this is intended to apply just to residential structures.
Other little quibbles, I'm sorry. Dwelling unit is defined as one or more habitable homes that are occupied by, or rooms that are occupied or designed or intended to be occupied by one person, by family or group, living together as a single household unit. That includes facilities for living and sleeping, and also includes facilities for cooking, eating, and sanitation. And then we have hotel and motel that says any structure containing 6 or more dwelling units that are intended, designed, or used for rental or hiring out for sleeping purposes. So that would mean, unless they include cooking, what did I say? Cooking, eating, and sanitation facilities, hotel and motel units wouldn't be covered by this code.
According to the way you've just read it.
Okay.
Is there any way in the future, Mr. Spicer-Kuhn, if you could give us some of these detailed questions before we come to this meeting? Because we could try to address those a little bit better with a chance to review it when we're kind of not under the gun. So.
Yes. And I apologize. I was out of town until this weekend. I didn't have a chance to go through it fully until today.
So let's just fulfill Councilor Peterson's prophecy and ask for all three of them to be tabled and postponed, and we'll have better answers when we come back.
Motion to table the last one.
It's been moved by Councilor Primer, second by Councilor Davis, that we table ordinance number 2331. Any public comment? Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 8-0.
I'll bring up, it was only the second two that my questions caused it to be tabled. The first one was.
Okay, Councilor Primer, the same question, please.
They were both going to get the repercussion from me in just a second. You beat me to it. So, I mean, all of our duties and responsibilities, we asked this to be moved ahead earlier in the week so that we had plenty of time to review the notes before the meeting. That's why you're getting them now on Wednesday instead of Friday. So please review the stuff ahead of time, and if these questions could be answered ahead of time, that would prepare these guys for better answers, rather than being put on the spot at the meeting. All right, so first quarter fiscal year 2021-2022 investment report. Mr. K, I'm guessing you're up. You ready for the bullets? They're come firing tonight.
Thank you. 2 marks and an 8 is what you got tonight. First quarter, not too bad. I thought I'd take the opportunity because we had a once-in-my-lifetime event happen that I thought I would use the opportunity to give you an investment primer. We had what was called a make-whole call on a Wells Fargo bond for $250,000. Now and we'll see these later as I go through the investments, they have call provisions, and a bond is issued to say, okay, we're going to pay you this rate for this long, but we're going to reserve the right to call the bond at a certain date in the future if the market warrants that action. And they settle it on that basis, so that for a period of time I know I'm protected. They can't call before then and cost me money. This is the first time I have seen a bank of this size, Wells Fargo, do what's called a make-whole call. What that means is they called the bond on 9/21, and it had a maturity out to 24. But in order for them to make that whole call effective to the bondholders, they have to say, we're going to pay you the interest you would have earned, and we're going to discount it at what the market rate is now for this bond. And we're going to pay you the value today of what you would have earned if you'd have held the bond to maturity. They really wanted to get out from under this bond. If you look, the coupon on it is 3.55%. That's very high in this market. And this was a multi-million-dollar bond issue. So I thought I'd just walk through what the rating is. That's the AA2, A+, AA-. The trade date, when we made the trade, we settled a day later on this one. The par issue that we bought was $250,000. And I had to go back to my investment 101 and recognize what CUSIP means. CUSIP is kind of like SEC, you know, Securities Exchange Commission. It actually stands for Committee on Uniform Securities Identification Procedure. This is like a social security number in your world in personal business. That's the only time that number will be used to identify an investment instrument. And then we had the security of the bond. That's Wells Fargo issuing it. The rate was 3.55. The maturity was 23. And they had at that time, 1 month before maturity, they reserved the right to call it. So they're calling it fully 2 years earlier, and we've made a nice profit on this. But the bad side is they called it because it was so expensive to them. Now we get to take the money they gave us and reinvest it at a much lower rate. So this is our primer for the day, just to let you all know what all that stuff means that I look at all the time. First quarter of our activity in the corporate financial markets, you'll see 6 securities that we bought in the first quarter. It's been a very active market in the corporate bonds, and that's not going to slow down, I don't think. I expect to see a couple of more calls in the next quarter. People are looking to do with their corporate bond issues just like people do on their mortgages. We're looking to find a cheaper way to finance our operation. You can see at the bottom there we have $1,386,000 at par. It's valued right now to $1,431,000. That's a 3% return on an annualized basis. That's not bad. We have what I call our energy portfolio and discretionary staples portfolio. The energy portfolio is very comfortable. We're earning basically a little over 5.5% on an annualized basis. And it's really good to hold Walmart and Apple right now because they're earning at annualized basis 6%. So all of our corporate bonds, if you look at the financial institutions, corporate energy, and discretionary staples, we're earning right around 4.34%. That's the good news. Bad news is in our bullets and agencies and treasuries, we're going to get a big hit in November. We'll have $1 million come maturing on the 5th and $75,000 from the Tennessee Valley Authority on the 1st. That's $1,075,000 I need to put back in securities to maintain our liquidity level. And we'll be lucky if we can get something between 0.75% and 1%, because that's just the way the market is right now. But I wanted you to be aware, you can see it right now, it's earning on a total basis 0.47% on an annualized basis. But we need that liquidity per our policy. And then finally, we have the municipals. This is a very good portfolio. Thank you for having the wisdom to allow us to invest in municipals. You can see our holdings right now are just north of a value of $935,000, returning a little over 5% on an annualized basis. So our total investable portfolio that we have out with our investment advisor has a current value of $5,289,000. With what we have in LGIP of 3.13, that gives us our total investments of $8,000,006. I did put a double asterisk on the LGIP. We invested the ARPA money as we got it, and I'm treating that as restricted. I'm going to leave it in LGIP because I don't know when we're going to get to it. It's earning 0.55%. I think that's a very good rate in this market, but I do not consider that to be funds that can be allocated for investment purposes with our advisor. So total funds that we have available and invested is $10,576,000. A little metrics table to show you what we have in cash, corporates, agencies, treasuries, municipals, and LGIP. We're well within our weighted average maturity per the policy of 2.5 years. We're at 2.2, and the percentage of the portfolio that's callable is 45%. And with that, I'll be glad to stand for any questions you might have.
Mr. K, that Wells Fargo one actually was a pretty good deal because we got the full value of that 2 years earlier. Now we can take that.
2 years earlier at a discount. Okay, you got to remember, it's in today's market rate discount. It's not going to be
so they
at
didn't
the
pay
discount.
the full value of the bond? I thought they owed up for whatever we committed to.
I'm sorry?
I thought they owed for whatever we committed.
Oh, yeah, they have to pay us, it's future value,
Right.
okay? They're going to discount it back to what that's worth today.
Okay.
And so you don't get the whole dollars that you would have at 3.55. It's something less than that. But they had to do that if they wanted the bondholders to redeem their bonds. And I will tell you, we made out really well because we have the monies now, not waiting 2 years to get it. But
And
the
we can turn
problem
around and
is
reinvest it.
reinvestment.
Yeah. Yeah. Other comments? Yeah.
Just a quick question. So on that first slide, the ones that you had highlighted, those were the ones that we purchased using that Wells Fargo.
Well, the ones that were highlighted in green, let me go back, in the financial portfolio, those are the ones that we bought in the first quarter of this year, either due to maturities or calls that we had to I went ahead and reinvested in corporates because they, even at 1%, they're better than what's in the agencies and treasuries.
Okay. So we haven't reinvested that Wells Fargo money yet then?
Oh, we have.
We have?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was on 9/21. It was a make-whole call. We got our money and reinvested it
Okay.
in a number of these instruments. Matter of fact, you can see, we turned around and we bought some Wells Fargo, but at a much, much lower rate.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
I,
See, now that's how you handle Counselor Spicer.
He must like you. Yeah.
Okay. Not.
Well, I think it's important, though, that the community gets to see this, that, you know, we're taking the resources that the community is giving us and trying to, you know, make more money with their money so that we're being good fiscal stewards of the community's money and trying to help spread out the value of that money so that we can do more with it. And so I think it's important that the community gets to see this on a fairly regular basis, and I appreciate you putting this together for us and working hard to try and make as much money on the money as you can.
Within reason and
Yep.
within certain boundaries, but this is an asset of the city, and I like to try to make all the assets of the city work as hard as possible.
Yeah. Perfect. Any other comments by counselors? All right, so we don't need to, yes, we do need to accept
Yes,
this.
you need to
Okay.
approve or accept.
Can I get, well, is there any public comment on the 2021, 2022 investment report? Okay, can I get a motion to accept the first quarter fiscal year 2021, 2022 investment report as presented?
So moved. Second.
I'm going to give this one to Mr. Spicer-Coon, seconded to Counselor Davis. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Smith, LLC constitutional changes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So at the end of next week is the annual business meeting of the League of Cities. It will be held virtually. And Councilor Hardin asked me to kind of walk through these constitutional changes that are proposed for LOC. And then I'm thinking he wants some feedback as to how he should vote related to these proposals. So first, the first proposed change, and these took up a number of different specific language changes in the Constitution. And if you'd like to see those, I can send that to you. But the first proposed change is that the current leadership structure of LOC board is set up in a way that the treasurer, whoever's elected to the treasurer position, that's a one-year position, and then they automatically move into the vice president, who automatically moves into the president. And the proposal would be that the treasurer position then is taken out of that automatic line of succession and becomes a two-year position, and that would be elected every 2 years by the membership, and that it would be then open to both elected and appointed officials to become the treasurer. All officials serving within a member city. So that's the first proposed change. The second one, the league is trying to be sensitive, or trying to make sure that the board is representative of the whole state. And so they try really hard to get elected members of the board, voting members of the board, to come from all 12 regions of the state. But sometimes they don't. They don't get candidates. They don't have people who are willing to serve in those positions. So what this proposed change would do is it allow the president and the nominating committee, after the elections have been held, they know what the voting members of the board are going to look like, where they're from, that then they allow them to go out into and solicit people who might be interested to be a non-voting member of the board from those regions that are not represented in the voting members. Now, there's the reasons for not trying to require someone from each region goes back to how that change would have to be made. So the league is formed by an agreement that was adopted by all the cities. And to change to where all of the board members, or would be the voting board members would be required to come from the regions, would require that 190 agreement to be redone. So what they're trying to do is at least seek the input of those who are from the different regions that might not be on the voting members, trying to find a way to do that without going to every city and getting that resolution readopted with different language. So
And it had to be unanimous.
And yes, it would have to be approved by every city, all 242 or something like that. So then the next change is the current constitution uses the term appointed, but it is not defined. And what they want to do is clarify what an appointed official is, and that is that it would be, let's see, where did I put that language? It would be any person who is appointed by a city council and holds the title of city manager or city administrator. If a member city does not have a position titled city manager or city administrator, the city recorder, provided they are appointed to their position by the city council, also constitutes an appointed position. So as I've put in here, there's 81 cities that have a population of 1,000 or less, and all of those, or most of those, are only managed by a city recorder. And so this is just would allow, again, appointed officials to come from those cities as well, even though they don't have the title city manager or city administrator. Number 4, this would allow past presidents of the board to continue to serve, whether they hold an elected or an appointed position with a member city. Currently, only past presidents who are an elected official can be on the board as a past president. And the last item is really trying to get the Constitution up to modern standards, and that is to allow holding a meeting by or through the use of any means of communication allowing all participants to simultaneously hear and speak to one another. So they didn't want to use any specific terms, try to leave it open, but there is still that need to hear things from both sides. So those are the 5 main areas. If there's any questions or anything that I can kind of clarify, I'm happy to do that.
The voting is on October 22nd?
That's correct.
I have one question. On number 4, what's the purpose of that?
I think it came to people's mind because there was a counselor, or was he the mayor? Counselor from Cottage Grove,
Yeah.
who then became, and was the president of the league, and then became the assistant city manager of Cottage Grove. And so they were wanting
Jake
to,
Boone.
Yeah.
they were trying to capture that, to keep his experience available to the board. But he technically doesn't meet this definition because he's not he's an assistant city manager, not the city manager. But if someone were to ever do that, to be on the board, to be the mayor or whatever of a city and then become a city manager, they could still be a past president and be on the board.
You know, of all of them, for me, all of them seem fine except for number 4. I think that current standard is, you know, if you're not an elected official or meet the criteria to be one of those, I don't think you should continue to serve. I think that, you know, we need to maintain the integrity of what the League of Cities is.
Well, I mean, just as a point, that's a perfectly valid point. There are already city managers and city administrators on the board, and so I don't. this wouldn't change that part of it.
And I'm fine with that part, but where I'm at is allowing somebody that is not in one of the defined positions as it sets right now, holding a position that is found as, as it's currently set. Me personally, I would say no on four.
I think to better understand the structure of the LLC board, though, past presidents don't have a voting role. They're there structurally for historical perspective. They give feedback on issues of why we went down this pathway or why we made these decisions, but they don't actually vote in any capacity. So they're not actually making any determining decisions. They're there just for historical reference, pretty much.
They're still available. They have not left the building, as it were, and they can be there at any time. They can be asked any question at any time. I just don't see the need for maintaining them as part of the board.
I think what the city manager was saying is those people are already on the board. It's just for the purpose of being a past president to share that experience because they're already on the board.
As I said, that's my opinion.
Clarification then, is this only for the position of past president?
Correct. And just as I've separated them out as 5, but I don't believe that's the way it's going to be voted on. I think it's going to be voted on as these sets of changes. So I just separated it as an easier way to explain them.
These are 5 individual amendments to the Constitution. I would imagine they're going to vote on each of them individually. I don't know that. For sure.
The way I saw the document didn't look like it, but
okay.
It might be.
Okay.
There's a big window there, so that's
Yeah.
probably a big.
Other questions from the board on any of these proposed amendments? Like them, don't like them? I think Council Harden's looking for some direction on you guys' thoughts about them. Councilor Primer said he liked all 5 except for the number 4, so he liked the other 4, right? Any other thoughts from anybody else? Yeah? Okay, so some more
I'd be in
support.
favor for 5 as well.
What's that?
I'd be in favor for all 5 as well.
All 5? Okay. And Laura, you were in favor of what Mr. Primer said, yeah? How about others? Thoughts?
I'm fine with all 5 changes.
I think all 5 are fine.
Renee, do you have an opinion?
All 5.
Yeah. Okay. Nancy, you okay too? All right. You need any more direction, Mr. Harden? Well, I appreciate you sitting in. I know this one's virtual again this year, and so you do have to go online and attend the meeting. And I believe there is some education that's going on that day, Mr. Smith, right? So it's like 4 hours or something?
Yeah, there's a couple of hours of some training prior to the annual business meeting.
So, yeah.
So anybody who was registered for the in-person conference was registered, and you can register for this only the online if you wish, if you weren't planning the other.
Yeah, so if you can, if you have the time, I think there's some valuable information that could be learned there for us too. So I'd encourage you to participate. Yeah, Mr. Ron? Oh, yeah,
And
Ms. Pierce.
if I can add something that's kind of on the coattails of the League of Cities thing, so on that Friday as well, for the general membership meeting, I got approved to be as part of the group of people getting pushed through for the board of directors for the Women's Caucus, and so I will be part of that lovely little hodgepodge getting pushed through for the official vote. So Hermiston, I was telling them, hey, come on up, I'll go out for watermelon tattoos and stuff. And I wasn't convincing them, but I said, how about some tacos? And they were like, all right, cool. So, but anyway, so that you'll also see that come across your radar.
Yeah, well, thank you for committing to that and your service to LOC. I, too, am running for a position. I think I told you this last time, the treasurer's position. So unless things go really, really bad, I am the only nominee. So hopefully I am your incoming treasurer and future president of the LOC board. Well, this year, the treasurer still steps through, so the amendment to
It
the
would
treasurer's
start
position would start next
January
year.
1st.
Yeah, so I've got to sit through 3 chairs rather than 2. Actually, I enjoy the treasurer's position, so I'll look forward to that. How about city committee reports, liaisons? Anybody have one? I had an EOTech meeting, which we hadn't had in a while. So it was good to get caught up. We had a couple new members, Weston Putman, Luke Swanson joined us. Got some good feedback from the Farm City Pro Rodeo and the Umatilla County Fair. Both of them thought that their numbers were up historically. Probably one of their best years, if not the best year for both of them. They said Friday night at the fair just rocked it, and that was the Latino night. So it was a huge turnout for Friday night. So good job to our community. I think people were just ready to get out and socialize. So congratulations to both of them. They talked about some structural changes that potentially we may have to look at doing in the future, and trying to make more capacity and more room up there. It's kind of hard to believe that you go from 15 acres to 90 acres and you start running into capacity issues, but yeah. So we looked and talked about EOTech and its structure. We talked about its goals, priorities that this council approved for up there, and how Mr. Smith and the city are going to tackle those goals. We talked a little bit about water some more, trying to find some solutions, getting more aggressive and working with the lacrosse group and trying to do some field development up there. They have a new security and safety system. PA was improved, cameras installed, so that was nice to hear. They've had very little theft as a result of the new security system, so that's good. We talked about the RV park and trying to develop that more fully. Right now, they're kind of parking everywhere, and occasionally equipment and stuff gets busted as a result of not parking in the right spots. So trying to get the campers out of the main commons area out into some sort of RV park would be ideal. And then they hired a new operations director, is that right? And he's got an agronomy background, so hopefully help us out in some of the agricultural development up there.
Yes, that's correct.
And our contract with, who's our contract with?
VenueWorks.
Yes. When is that one up for consideration again?
The first opportunity would be next year.
Okay.
In 2022.
And so he was hired by VenueWorks, is that
Yes.
right? Yeah. Okay. How about other committee reports? Nothing? Yes, Mr. Harden?
We had a faith-based meeting, and there's 3 things that were covered: National Faith and Blue Weekend presentation by the chief, which kind of looks like it might be something like a harvest gathering, including the farmers and as much as they've contributed over all these years, and connecting the police and the faith groups together. So I think appreciate that presentation. Also, True Care presented their newest program that they have. And then also there was Utility Assistance Fund, getting the nonprofits or the churches to participate with the city as far as utility assistance programs. So those are the 3 main topics that were covered.
Excellent. Any other committee reports? Okay, on to the mayor's report. The only other thing I was going to add this evening, well, I guess 2 things. So got an update from the Bird Company about their progress since they've been here. They've been here 7 months now. There are, just these are kind of stats that they provided for us, 100 birds in the community. They have saved 6,000 or 6.1 metric tons of CO2 by riders. There's been 13,750 rides so far, and they've gone 28,742 miles. So they're getting utilized. I see them quite everywhere in the community. How we doing, Chief? They doing okay? We're having any issues with them at all? I know they occasionally get left crossways and sidewalks and that sort of stuff, but
Yeah, that's the biggest complaint is just where they're at times, but
yeah,
we haven't had any major issues.
yeah, that's not necessarily the company's responsibility. I mean, it is, but not their responsibility to try and make people be reasonable and sensible where they park those things. Ms. Smith, you got any feedback from that?
Well, that's similar. We did have one person, I think, come to talk with the council, and that was the issue, you know,
Yeah.
having them
Where they're parking them.
in the way of, you know, people using the sidewalks. So.
And then attended a meeting with Hacienda. I can't remember the whole group's name. Hacienda CDC, yeah. Representative Smith, UEC, hosted a member or a group meeting. Councilor Duran was also there. And it was a good conversation about potential housing development in our community, trying to address some of our missing home opportunities. Both Nate Rivera and Mark Morgan were also there for the city, representing us in the conversation. But there was multiple communities that were there, multiple agencies that were represented. Everybody's interested in greater access to housing and affordable housing specifically, and trying to meet some segments of our population that we're not currently addressing, and trying to find some more solutions. So it was nice to have them here and looking at our region and our area. And it's not just Hermiston. I think they're also talking to Umatilla and Pendleton, trying to address the market need in this area. Any other comments on that? I didn't get to attend the whole meeting. Oh, you weren't there. Mr. Morgan, any comments?
No, I just think it was a good meeting from, you know, that group is coming, trying to look to help us meet our housing needs, and I think it was a good conversation amongst everybody across the various communities here in the region, helping to work with them. They've been working with a number of other local partners. I think they may be zeroing in on a couple of properties here in the region, and so they're really just looking for the niche that they can help fill.
Yep, and I think they've already partnered with the school district potentially.
It sounds like they're heading that direction, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So another housing development in our area. We need housing, and hopefully the more housing we can provide, the less cost it is. It seems to be going through the roof these days. Council reports. Anybody else got any comments? Yes, Ms. Myers?
Ribbon cutting last Wednesday for the Oregon-Washington Health Network. And what they do is they offer help with individuals and family members that are experiencing substance abuse issues. And, you know, it's such a horrible issue nationwide. I think we should feel fortunate to have an agency locate here that can offer some kind of help to these people. They
Yeah,
have a new facility. It's not new. They've fixed up a facility, and it's very nice. Offers some individual little places for people to go and be able to get some counseling
Yeah.
and help for substance abuse.
And where are they located?
165 Southwest 3rd Street.
So is that over by the
The
post office?
Quonset hut is where it's at, yes. Yeah.
Yep. Right, where the antique store. Right, okay. And this is a free service?
As far as I know, yes, they
Yep.
didn't mention me.
They said that what they do is they provide assistance in getting the counseling, getting insurance problems taken care of. They're a walk-in center. They do have 24/7 access to peer counselors. They're working towards getting even more. They currently have 3 locations, one here in Hermiston, one in Pendleton, and one in Clearwater. In addition to Jackie and I being there, there was also members from the local office of the Community Corrections, hospitals, medical personnel were there to show their support of the facility. They're going to pull a recovery mentors for the assistance of these folks, and it's kind of a little niche that hasn't been filled, and I think it's going to be a major asset for this area. I know that I was told that the number has already been put in dispatch at the sheriff's office, so that's going to help give us the law enforcement community is going to be able to have a way to point people to a direction to get some of the assistance that they may need.
Good. Thank you, counselors, for attending the ribbon cutting, and thank you to that association for coming into our community and trying to address a need that is being unmet. And I think it's all addiction services, if I remember right. And so trying to find some solutions, and they have some good stories about some recovery, some folks that have gone through the process and recovered, and they can share those stories, and sometimes those peer mentors are the best resources you can find. So it's excellent to have them in our community. Councilor Barone?
I wanted to add on to that. Even though I wasn't able to be at the ribbon cutting, I did stop by just to see how it was, and they are peer mentoring services, so these are kind of like the midway connection between actual counseling and where the person finally enters the door to really enter into recovery services. So recovery can be a difficult thing. Sometimes people really just struggle with even admitting that they have a problem, and peer mentoring services, some of the times, a lot of the people that are in peer services have been through experiences that are similar, and so can really relate to people that are going through in a rough way. And so I also really did like the location of where it's at. The location is near Mackenzie Park, but it's also right near where the bus stop is at. And I know that we've frequently had some drug use in that area, I guess, in the transient area. And so I think it's a really great spot to be in, and the people there that work there are great people that have been in those services for a while. And so I was also really happy to see that there's bilingual services as well. The counselors there are adept in working Spanish and English and understand it through and through. So I think it's a great opportunity to have here in our community. It is something that's dearly missed, and peer mentoring really helps people that are in, it is the first step. It's kind of people that are ambivalent about actually getting services. A peer mentor will really encourage and steer them to recovery. And so they're great services that are dearly needed in our area. And so I really love the location more than anything. I think it's a great place to be, and hopefully continued success for them.
Okay. Any other counselor reports this evening? Ms. Smith?
Yeah, so specifically I did include at your place there at the dais a report on the most recent goal setting session. I wanted to highlight just a few of those. Goal number 1 was to develop an engagement and communication infrastructure to provide accessible engagement opportunities. We've been trying to utilize a number of different tools to improve two-way communication, like it's listed there, using technology and different outreach, and so I think we're finding a few things that are helping us communicate a little bit better. We've been getting some good reactions to some of our more recent social media posts, things like that. So that's something we've really been focusing on. The community visioning process is going well. At the end of September, we closed the survey. Lily and I will be having a meeting with the consultants this week to start mapping out the next few steps. We look to probably be finished. It's a little bit later than the goal on the timeline, but probably by the end of this calendar year is our goal. So that's going well. Also wanted to highlight this morning, I guess it was early this afternoon, we had a first meeting with the partners related to a potential new bridge over the Umatilla River. The city of Umatilla and Umatilla County, we met with the engineers just to kind of get everybody on the same page on the process as we study the two possible locations that we're examining. Let's see, we're also one of these tasks under Goal 5, develop partnerships with mental health service providers. I think we've made a good start with our new mental health provider in the county. Just to have a representative from there come to talk with the council, I think was a great step, and I think I know the police department's looking forward to working with them. So that's another step we're moving forward on. And then we anticipate being back to you to talk a little bit more about broadband at our next meeting. We've taken a little bit more of a step with our consultants on that, and have some more things to bring back to the council. So that's just touching on a few of the items. If there's any questions on any of the other goals or what we might be working on, please be open to answer that.
Councilors? Yes, Councilor Brown?
Looking at Goal 3 and Section 1, is there any traction on that becoming, I guess, for there to be another proposal, or is that going to come back to the council?
Yeah, so we have kind of, that one has kind of slipped into the back burner just a little bit, but we are working on some other ideas related to the green property, and actually have had some conversations, productive conversations with the neighbors as some potential partnerships. So we're looking at that. So I do anticipate bringing it back. It probably would be towards the end of the year, maybe first of next year, to bring back some more ideas, a more firm proposal.
And are those proposals going to be just like it was highlighted in the goal setting? So is it going to be senior housing, or is it going to be something different?
As the goal said, we're gonna
Okay.
try. I don't think it's going to be an assisted living center, which is what we had originally brought forward, but we're looking at other options of ways to provide senior housing. So.
I guess is that option, or I guess that proposal, is that no longer on the table?
With the assisted living, yeah, that company has seemed to kind of step back and not be interested at this point. So.
Other questions? Okay. Anything else, Mr.?
I have one other. I just wanted to let the council know we closed the recruitments on both the Parks and Rec director and the court administrator. We had 13 applicants for the Parks and Rec position and 12 applicants for the court position. So very excited. We walked through the whole pool today. By the end of the week, we'll decide who the city will interview. The recruiter has interviewed a number of them and made recommendations, and we'll make a final decision on which group we will carry forward as we go forward with that process.
Awesome. When do you anticipate completion of that process?
Probably finishing in November, making a final decision then.
Trying to have them on staff by the first of the year? Is
Yeah.
that the plan? Right on. It's exciting.
Yeah, that is.
Look forward to it. Anything else?
I would just encourage you all to go look at City Hall. They're forming up the main floor to pour that concrete. Their original goal was to pour it this week. I haven't checked in to see if they're still on target, but that's starting to really take shape.
Might be a little cold tomorrow.
Yeah.
32 or something tonight.
Yeah. But they weren't quite done with the forms, so maybe by the end of the week they'll be warm enough.
Right on. Yeah, I drove by it today. The floor, though, is it going to be wood?
No, that's the forms. They're going
Okay.
to pour concrete into that.
Okay.
And then strip off the wood.
Got it. Yeah, no, seems like it's moving a lot faster these days. So.
It feels a lot faster now.
Yeah.
It's better.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Smith?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned. Have a good evening.